Right, everyone, welcome to this show. I'm really, really excited for this one because we have Clive De Carle on the show. How are you doing, sir?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, lovely day.
And a beautiful background there, one of the nicest backgrounds we've had. Hopefully, it's not a green screen. And
No, it's absolutely real.
and we have Dan Roytas, the incredible Dan Roytas. He's a fan favorite of the show at the moment. Like people are loving him. How are you doing, Dan?
Doing really well, John. Thanks for having me back on the show. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you again. And yeah, Clive, really nice to meet you. I've followed your work for many years, so pleasure.
Great.
Likewise.
Okay, this is going to be fantastic. Okay, so today's show, everyone, is going to be generally around vitamins and supplements. And we're going to be asking the question, how important is it for us to have vitamins and supplements? Can we potentially not have vitamins and supplements and still live a healthy life? Are they literally, as they say, supplements just to kind of, do the things that we're not, get the nutrients that we're not getting from our normal diet? Are there any alternatives to this? Can we not have any vitamins at all, but maybe go back to whole foods and organic foods, and that does the trick? Can we do that in today's society where, the soil's depleted and the nutrients are depleted and we kind of almost have to compensate for that? So we're going to start off with Clive. I'd like to start off with you, my friend. I've seen you do the circuits, the speaking circuits, and you do a lot of talks about vitamins, and you've gone to a lot of sort of truth festivals and communities, and you do a lot of talks on this subject matter. What's your opinion on vitamins, and what got you into that, and how important is it?
Well, these days, as you've alluded to, it really is vital. What happened to me is 40 years ago, I made a big mistake. I went to a doctor. That was the mistake. He gave me an antibiotic. That was the second mistake. I took it. That was the third mistake. And within a few months, I'm in hospital, unable to walk or get dressed. And weeks and weeks in hospital, they can do nothing. I keep saying I'm not low on drugs, even though they're trying to say that's the answer. Drug deficiency isn't my problem. And eventually, because I still read books, I worked out what was wrong with me. I worked out what the antibiotic had done, damaged the friendly bacteria in my body. And I worked out how to fix it, which was with minerals and vitamins, basically. And primarily, the number one answer for, I had rheumatoid arthritis as a result of this. The number one answer for that is magnesium. Just the simple supplement, the mineral magnesium, has to be the right type and it has to be in the right quantity. But that's not difficult to find. People get surprised by the quantities. Most people, if I ask, have you tried magnesium? Well, they'll say, well, yeah, I tried it. Where did you buy it? At the supermarket, let's say. How many did you take? One. Or on a good day, maybe they took two. However, they probably took the wrong type. So at best, it might have loosened their bowels, because magnesium is very good, for people with constipation, but it won't have given them enough magnesium to get rid of the pain. If somebody's a normal size and weight, I might suggest that they might want to take two of my magnesium capsules, which are quite big and chunky, up to 12 times a day. Which most people go, how could you possibly suggest 12 times? I'm sorry, not 12 times a day. Two capsules 6 times a day. That's what I meant to say, which would total 12 capsules. Now, a lot of people don't need that much, but if somebody's desperately low, they've got rheumatoid arthritis or any type of arthritis, they are in real pain, then to begin with, they may need that much just to get their levels up to at least halfway to normal, when the pain should subside. So, on one hand, because illness normally involves a lot of suffering, and I did a lot of that for months. It took me a year and a half to actually completely get better. With what I know now, I could have done it much quicker, but that was 40 years ago. And the arthritis doesn't come back in 40 years. I learned how to fix it, fixed it, and that was it. So what I'm trying to do is to educate people to understand that actually health isn't nearly as difficult as medicine. Medicine is horrendously complex. You have to go to school for 5 years plus to learn it. And then, as far as I can see, they just go onto Google and look it up anyway. But actually, health comes down, I would say, to 10 primary supplements. You can cover most people's health problems with just 10 things.
Okay, so magnesium being one.
Vitamin C being number 2.
Mm.
Yeah, the order is arguable. Vitamin D,
Mm.
because we don't get enough sunshine in winter in England. I used to get colds, flus, whatever you want to call them, every year up until about 18 years ago when I realized I was low on vitamin D in winter. I started taking 10,000 IUs of vitamin D every couple of days or so, and I've never got another cold again in 18 years. And I only changed one thing at that point, which was vitamin D in winter.
Mm. Okay, great. And so there's others as well, but maybe that we can come on to those a little bit later. But they're the kind of they must be your granddaddy list, right? Of those, they must be the kind of the core ones. So
I would also include iodine.
right, okay.
Iodine is massive, and I can explain why.
Mm.
I did a video last year where I got 3 glasses of tap water, obviously with chlorine in it. I got a little bottle of chlorine indicator drops that are used for swimming pools. Put a few drops in, and it goes green. Okay, there's chlorine in the water. The next one, put my fingers in the water for 5 seconds and pulled them out. Put the chlorine indicator drops, didn't go green. Where did the chlorine go? Third glass, I got a little slice of raw potato, dunked it for 3 seconds and pulled it out. Chlorine indicator drops, no sign of chlorine. Presumably, it had gone into me and it had gone into the potato. So what happens if you have a shower in chlorinated water? How much of it, and it's a poison gas, is going into the body? If you have a bath, but how much of that chlorine are you sucking out of the bath and into you? So if you ingest chlorine, whether you breathe it in or drink it, it's going to deplete the iodine that's naturally in the thyroid. And lots of people, particularly women, have thyroid issues. Now, on top of that, if you are low on iodine, all your hormones aren't going to be working properly. Hormones are about cholesterol, good cholesterol, natural animal fats, for instance, and iodine. So, in Japan, where the people there eat iodine all the time because they're eating seaweed non-stop, it's pretty much standard with every meal, lots of sea fish, lots of iodine. The Japanese didn't have a word for menopause until the Western diet got introduced, because it wasn't happening, because the iodine was regulating the women's thyroids, and the thyroid controls temperature. Iodine controls the thyroid along with selenium. And basically, there are so many problems that are just considered, oh, well, that's what happens. Once a month, the women don't feel well because they're having their period. Well, that just happens. It's not normal. It's not normal. Neither are hot flushes for women at menopause, and so on. It's so accepted because it happens to so many people. Even the doctors think, oh, that's normal. That's just old age. But actually, most of what makes us unwell is just toxic poisoning and or nutrient deficiency. But generally, it's both.
Generally, it's both. Yeah, I'd like to bring Dan in on this as well, because Dan has spent a lot of time also investigating vitamins and also trying to find other sort of solutions as well with whole foods and organic farming and things like that. Dan, do you have any comments at this stage? I mean, what you were someone that you were taking a lot of vitamins at one point, weren't you? And then you started to look into it a little bit more, and you've got like a slightly different take on it.
Yeah, I was taking vitamins for a long time. I was teaching people to prescribe vitamins for a long time, clinicians and undergraduate students, and prescribed fistfuls of supplements to my clients for over 10 years in clinical practice, and underwent a bit of a shift in my thinking a few years ago. And I just thought I would go back to the start and look at the foundational evidence by which a lot of this stuff is based upon. And I was alarmed at some of the things that I found, and it really made me question what I was doing with supplementation. And even, I mean, I'm going to throw the cat among the pigeons here, the concept of a thing called a vitamin deficiency. So I think our understanding there might be somewhat deficient, with this idea that we get sick because we become deficient in something in a food. I also come at this from a perspective of like food synergy and the food matrix. So are we able to just provide a single substance and supplement ourselves out of a whole food deficiency? Even though some people feel better when they take supplements, is it really doing what we think that it's doing? I've got many other sort of things that raised alarm bells for me when it comes to supplementation. And that's the way that they're manufactured, and the people who are manufacturing them, and some of the big product companies that distribute products to clinicians and practitioners, and the various information that is given to us by the marketing team to glam all this stuff up. When you start to peel back the layers of the onion on this, you get to a conclusion that is in stark contrast with the story that we're told about vitamins and food and how these things are purported to work. I've got a lot of questions. I don't claim to know the answers, but I'm looking at this and going, there's many, many things that aren't lining up. I still don't know many of I still don't have information to many of the questions that I have, and I may not ever get answers to those things. But I continue to look, I continue to read widely. And hopefully conversations like this can open up the discussion, and we can possibly get to the bottom of what's really going on.
Yeah, fantastic. Clive, I mean, what would you say to that then? Because I mean, I get the impression that we can't really get a healthy diet with today's toxicity in the environment. A lot of the soil's depleted. A lot of people are going to supplements to kind of make up for the lack of nutrients that they get in their normal biosphere, right? And could you also mention a little bit about what you've seen with the people that have taken, especially your supplements? Because Dan was actually made a good point there about Big Pharma, I think, has a handle of a lot of these supplements, right? So it's difficult to find the right ones. But what would you say about the importance of vitamins? And obviously, have you seen results with your your clients and the people that you've given them to? Has it helped them with the issues that they've had, irrespective of their normal diet?
Well, I get people writing in telling me daily that magnesium in particular has changed their life, because now they can renew their profession, now they can walk again, that kind of stuff. But it's worth bearing in mind that Holland and Barrett years ago were owned by the Carlyle Group, who are arms manufacturers. So you can trust arms dealers to put the best ingredients in your supplements, can't you? There's another company that owns it now. But, it suits the interests of Big Pharma to sell you supplements that don't really work. And then people, say, oh, I tried that, didn't work, and let's go to the doctor and get another pill for the job. So I think probably maybe only 5% of the natural health supplement companies out there are actually honest. I might be wrong about that, but I challenged one company a while back. They said that all their products were food-based. Okay, sounds great. Food-based, a whole range. So I looked at the ingredients, and 80% of the capsule was filled with broccoli powder, but it was still the same type of zinc that everybody else used. But legally, they could say it was food-based because they'd added a whole load of broccoli powder that, in this case, was not going to contribute to their health. So every product, even though it technically wasn't food-based, they just put the broccoli in there. So you can't necessarily trust what's going on. And the reason I started a supplement company in the first place was that I realized that even if you walk into the best health food store in the land, the salespeople only know probably what the company salespeople have told them. They don't necessarily really know actually what's best. So I thought, well, I'll start a company that just sells the very best I can possibly do. Now, I used to have an organic farm for 10 years. And during that period, I didn't need to supplement at all with anything because I was growing my own food. It was fresh. it was fantastic. Didn't really have a problem. But now, even though I actually really, really clean food that's available to me where I live, I'm still aware that if I don't supplement, say, with magnesium, that I get muscle cramps. One of the other things that the taking the antibiotic did 40 years ago is to make me type 1 diabetic. That means you got to take insulin, and I still am. And so that changes how your body functions. So I need to take supplements to deal effectively with antibiotic damage from 40 years ago. Now, how many people haven't had an antibiotic in their lives? Most people have had one, which means that the bacteria, which is in your brain and your gut, all through your body, has been damaged. Now, there are supplements, we could talk about them, where you can regrow your friendly bacteria that you were born with originally. Yes, you can put in yogurt and all sorts of things from outside, and there are certain parts of the gut that benefit from sort of yogurt type food or sauerkraut type food. But what you really want to do in the base of the bowel is to put back the bacteria you were born with, the ones you were meant to have. And our ancestors used to eat, it seems, quite a lot of tubers. They would have been hunter-gatherers, but tubers were one of the things that were available at different times of the year, and they contain oligosaccharides. And it turns out that if you take a supplement that's got oligosaccharides in it, like the ancient diet would have been, the bacteria absolutely love it and then will thrive. And if you've got some unfriendly bacteria, it'll overcome them and wipe them out. So I reckon everybody needs to think about their gut. As they say, the road to health is paved with good intestines.
If that isn't a book title already, it might have to be my YouTube title or something like that. Very good though. And that's interesting what you said there, Clive, about you actually used to have your own farm, did you say? And you grew your. So did you find when you were eating locally sourced food, did you find as though you didn't need supplements, or did you still need supplements even then?
No, at that point I didn't. But
Right.
that was 30 years ago, and I was younger then, and my digestive system was probably in really great working order. I mean, I'm 70 now, so there is a bit of a slowdown that can happen as far as digestion is concerned. And so, I mean, when we're kids, we can eat any old rubbish and seem to thrive. We seem to be able to get absolutely every gram of nutrients out of the Kit Kat or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But we can't get away with this so much as we get a bit older.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would love to think that we could all eat our way to good health. But most people don't even have a shop that sells anything healthy. Yes, we could be growing it in the garden, but a lot of people don't have a garden. The next answer is to sprout stuff. You sprout mung beans, for instance, and just rinse them every day. And 1 week later, like quarter of an inch of mung beans have become, quarter of a meter of bean sprouts. You can have fresh food that's just in your cupboard. Seeds don't need light to grow even. So you can sprout all sorts of seeds. You can make a salad with 15 different seeds, and 2 days later it's sprouted and ready. And you've maybe increased the nutrition that was in that seed or in that bean by 50 times? Dormant to alive, big difference.
Dan, I'd like to ask you, because you are someone that you're a strong proponent of whole food, organic food, and that can often be the solution that we're looking for. But would you say though, as Clive's mentioning there, that it's still not enough? We still need to supplement. I mean, especially with the toxicity of the environment, the fact that we're getting older, we can't rely on these things anymore. And also, even when we do grow, the food, and well, who can grow the food generally? I mean, it's out of convenience. We have to go to the supermarket. Not many people have their own fruit and veg patch, stuff like that. What's your take on that then? I mean, is there any, would you say that there, well, firstly, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think you can get my point.
I guess my concern here is that we may be looking at the things the wrong way. So I actually agree with most of what Clive's saying. Absolutely. I am a big proponent for whole foods and people either growing their own foods or sourcing food that is locally grown, sustainably, organically, free from pesticides and poisons, supporting farmers that grow food the right way. I think that's a big step forward in the right direction. Currently, in a world that is plagued by an agricultural farming practice that is very similar to the practices employed in medicine, which is like a burn, cut, poison approach. It's the same thing that we're doing to our food. Look, the thing that really got me questioning this whole idea about, we're talking about vitamin deficiencies here. So minerals are a totally different kettle of fish. The reason why I started questioning this idea about vitamin deficiencies is when I started looking back through the literature to when so-called vitamins were discovered, many of the guys that were discovering this stuff, the original researchers, were saying their perspective was that it was actually a toxicity disease. So the vitamin deficiency diseases that we saw, like beriberi and pellagra and scurvy, they were saying were toxicity diseases, not deficiency diseases. And I thought, okay, this is really odd because I've never heard of this in all my years of training. And, surely if this was the case, there would be evidence to support this. So I went searching for it, and lo and behold, I did find human experiments that were done, which are like in direct contrast with this idea that we have things called vitamin deficiency diseases. So I'll give you a couple examples here, which made me question this idea. One was done by medical doctors in Japan around World War II. So there was a lot of beriberi that was occurring. And the doctors said that this disease is they believed that it was a toxicity disease, even though in the West at the time they said it was a deficiency in vitamin B1. So they believed that it was a toxin in the milk that was causing the children to become sick. So what they did in young infants who were drinking milk, who had infantile beriberi, they took them off the milk and then fed them a diet exclusively of condensed milk, sweetened condensed milk. And their beriberi went away almost instantly, within a few days. Their symptoms resolved. So I look at that and I go, if beriberi is a vitamin B1 deficiency, yet they were given a diet that was also devoid in vitamin B1, how is it that their symptoms and their disease went away if they never repleted themselves with this vitamin? And there are many, many other examples of this in the literature where like people with pellagra, for example, a deficiency in so-called vitamin B3, were fed a diet. So they took people with pellagra and then doctors fed them exclusively on a diet which was shown to cause pellagra in other groups of people. And curiously, their pellagra also went away. So they were fed a diet deficient in B3, yet the disease reversed itself. So, I mean, we're talking about extreme cases of so-called nutrient deficiency here. How is it possible, even if there was a very, very, very small amount of vitamin B1 or B3 or whatever it is in these different diets and in sweetened condensed milk, that it was sufficient to reverse their disease? And then I also have looked at literature where they tried to induce vitamin deficiency diseases in people, where they put them on like a bread and water diet for sometimes hundreds and hundreds of days at a time, sometimes over a year at a time. And in these experiments, they weren't able to induce the diseases that they were trying to induce. So, I mean, we have to ask the question, are vitamin deficiency diseases being caused by deficiency, or are they caused by toxicity, where we take a processed and refined food or some like toxic milk, for example, And that processed and refined food results in incomplete metabolism in the body, and it leads to a buildup of metabolic intermediate metabolites that essentially cause toxicity and poisoning to the body. Now, this would make sense if you take someone eating a specific diet who gets pellagra, and then you change them over to another diet that is also deficient in that vitamin, and their symptoms go away, because now they're eating foods that are producing other metabolites that may not have built up in the system, and they're avoiding the foods that were breaking down and maintaining levels of these metabolites that were poisoning them. So you're effectively removing the poison by changing their diets. So I look at this and I scratch my head, and I find it difficult to reconcile that with this idea of nutrient deficiency. So, I mean, this is just one of the issues that I see. There's many other things that I think are problematic with this concept as well, above and beyond whether or not there are vitamin deficiencies. And that involves things like food synergy and the food matrix. But I guess I don't want to open too many cans of worms here. I guess that's sort of my perspective, and why I am questioning this entire idea around vitamins. And obviously my mind isn't made up here nor there. I'm just looking at this and trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're 100% right. And I noticed this 40 years ago when friends of mine would be so excited about going on holiday. And what would happen is the story was so common. They said they got on the plane, really happy to go on holiday, and they caught a cold. It must have been an infection that they caught in the air conditioning. And that was just so clearly rubbish. All that was happening was their body was so toxic that the moment they relaxed, as they sat on the airplane, went, "Oh, we're going on holiday," the body went, "Whoopee, let's get rid of all the snot, let's detoxify, let's run a high temperature, let's get rid of it." And I mean, let me take it another step. Doctors use the word autoimmunity as an excuse for doctors' errors and doctors' ignorance. So what happens is, I was told 40 years ago, you've got rheumatoid arthritis, this is an autoimmune disease, your body's gone wrong, and we intelligent doctors can fix it. This is total rubbish. Your body never goes wrong. It adapts. Illnesses don't happen to you, they happen for you, so that you can learn something new and change who you are and who you want to be and change who you were, essentially, get over the past. So I use the words like vitamin deficiency or mineral deficiency. I mean, I usually try to use nutrient deficiency, because at the end of the day, a lot of people are starving because they are missing the nutrients that, if they don't need, some of the bacteria in them do. I mean, there's, I think that while one can live on sunlight, there's ample evidence to show that you can live on light. There's ample evidence that you don't need your eyes to see. I don't know if you know, but between the ages of 5 and 11, you can teach children to see without their eyes, totally blindfold them so they can see nothing. And most of them can learn, sometimes in 5 minutes, how to see without your eyes. There's a secondary mechanism. So I completely agree that what we're looking at as the vitamin deficiency is an incorrect way to describe it, but it certainly does appear that it is one of several ways to overcome serious issues. I mean, the first time I saw, and for legal reasons I spell it with a K, first time I saw terminal cancer reversed was about 38 years ago, using 35 grams of vitamin C every day. He lived another 20 years, and when he did die, it wasn't from cancer. So, whether he was deficient in vitamin C or not, he clearly needed it. So, I don't know whether Dan's got an idea as to what could have done in that case instead of vitamin C, for instance. What do you have an approach that you think might have worked? I mean, he'd been given weeks to live.
Yeah, well, I have various different perspectives on this. So there are instances in the literature where people have been given various different placebo substances like saline, for example, under the guise that they were receiving a various drug, and they were able to reverse that disease with the power of their mind alone. So, I mean, that's one explanation here that we might be seeing, is that the intervention was the thing. Regardless of what it was, the intervention would have had the effect anyway. It's also possible that vitamins are working. I mean, when we're talking about vitamins here, we're talking about synthetic substances that are made by pharmaceutical companies from mostly genetically modified substances and various other toxic reagents in a lab, and they're creating a crystalline powder, putting it in a bottle and then giving it to people, and claiming that what's in that pill is the same as what's in the food. So the way I look at that is what they're actually making is a drug.
I don't think anybody is claiming that ascorbic acid, for instance, is the same. Obviously, fruits have way more than just vitamin C in it, and obviously natural vitamin C is going to be different than synthetic. I mean, the vitamin C I use, and most people I know would only choose, is the non-GMO sourced version of it. But there have been a lot of attacks against vitamin D, vitamin C, saying, well, it's not natural, it's synthetic. And of course it is. And normally I don't like synthetic products. However, vitamin C has been so well studied over the last 6 decades that ascorbic acid or sodium ascorbate, whichever one you choose, there are other versions, are magnificently effective for so many things. It's incredible. I mean, I've seen people whose lives, well, have been saved, with it.
Mm. How would you say?
I think,
yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say that there's no papers that I've ever come across where they've compared the effects of vitamin C, so-called vitamin C in food. So where they've taken a bunch of food, directly extracted vitamin C from that food, and then given it to people, and then also given them synthetic vitamin C, maybe like a crossover type trial, and it evaluated the effects. All I've ever seen is experiments where they've given a synthetic substance, they've observed an effect, and then equated that to, say, vitamin C in food also does this same thing. So they're not really validating the effect of the stuff that's in the food against the synthetic stuff. So like drug companies, believe it or not, make drugs. And you give a drug to a person and you get a certain effect. Now that effect, you can make up any story that you want. And you can say, well, this effect that we observed was due to the vitamin C. The various different foods have vitamin C in it. Therefore, what's in our pill is the same as what's in food. And I'm not convinced that we can actually truly ever get close to understanding what's in food. I think we have a fairly good idea of what's in a synthetic substance because we can manufacture it and we can do various analytical processes on it. But it's very difficult to actually do that on a whole food. And I'm not convinced that food is made up of a whole bunch of individual substances. I actually think it's a whole thing.
Oh, cool.
And we need that whole thing, all of the substances working together in concert to have a particular effect in the body. If we just give a single substance, a synthetic single substance, which is in essence a drug, and we see an effect, I think it's erroneous for us to sort of equate that to how foods are working. And this is how they came to the conclusion that things called vitamin C were in fruits. Is they had people with scurvy, they took fruit and they added a bunch of stuff to it. They added, I think the first thing they added to the fruit juice was lead citrate, and they started adding in all these other reagents and heating it up and cooling it down. And along the way, they gave it to the people to see the effects that it had. And eventually they came up with a recipe that when they gave it to the people, the symptoms of scurvy went away. They said, well, this must be the same thing that's in the food. And I sort of sit there and I think, hang on a second, you guys have just added a bunch of stuff in, done a bunch of chemical reactions, and now claiming that what you've created in the lab is the same as what's in the food. And I'm very dubious about accepting these claims, particularly because they come from the same people who manufacture the drugs. So they try and sell us this idea that the food's deficient, and if you don't get the vitamins from us because your food's deficient, you're going to get sick. So they've got a monopoly on this. They can't lose. They create the problem and they create the solution.
Well, there's no question that nutrients from living foods are a million times better for you than one synthetic isolated material. However, anybody sensible who's taking vitamin C as ascorbic acid, you would have thought would be eating some fruits and vegetables as part of their diet, or decent quality food, whatever it might be, not processed food. So I for one in no way say that vitamin D is the same as the sun or vitamin C is the same as food. However, for the last 20 years I've been offering people choices of, would you like extracts of food like camu, acerola cherry, concentrates? But I've not witnessed that people could take enough physically of it to be the equivalent of maybe the 100 grams of vitamin C they might need for their particular condition. Physically, I didn't see that it was really possible. Maybe now there are concentrates that are much more powerful from whole fruits and so on. But when I was last looking at it, I couldn't find anything that did the job. And at the end of the day,
I guess
it's does it work? Is the person still alive 20 years later, or whatever it is? Because the semantics of what's real and what's not real. If it works, it works.
Yeah, I guess I definitely hear what you're saying. I think there's a big difference between. It's much easier to sell this idea that the reason why you're sick is because there's something that's not in your food that's making you sick, and we've got the answer to it. Like, we can make this thing in our lab and we can provide you with the thing that's lacking in your food, compared to selling this idea of it's what is in the food and it's what we're doing to it, and it's the processing and the refining and the manufacturing and the artificial colors and the flavors and the pesticides and yada, yada, yada that's actually making you sick. So
yeah, exactly.
I think we're possibly we may be having a bit of a short-sighted approach here, because people look at this and go, that's all right. If I don't eat a great diet, I'll just take the vitamin and I'll boost myself up and I'll be okay. I'll nourish myself with the things that aren't in my food that are lacking, and all is good in the world. But, this has got many flow-on effects here, because that keeps people from then really wanting to get to the bottom of the problem. So it doesn't matter if my food's poisoned or it's processed or it's refined or it's yada, yada, yada. I'll just take the pill and it'll undo all that, undo all that damage.
Some people are going to be idiots and are going to believe that. But, I think the people watching this podcast are way past that point. They're perfectly aware that they need to take responsibility for their own health. And, it's unfortunate that most people are brainwashed. They look at the newspaper, they believe what the media says, and they can't see the patently obvious. Everything you're saying is absolutely true and obvious.
I wish it was.
Funny enough,
I really wish it was.
But Dan's just actually written a book called "Can You Catch a Cold?" and it's all about the erroneous idea that it's
Yeah, you can't.
No.
It's crazy. You can't.
But it's funny how that is the dominant paradigm. That is the consensus. That's the status quo. But even saying that is fringe.
It makes so much sense that you catch a cold. I mean, everybody believes it basically. But all the experiments have been done for the last 100 years, shoving snot down other people's throats and up their noses and covering their head with a bag full of snot and stuff. Nobody's ever proved transmission. It's crazy.
Yeah.
In the same way that nobody's ever isolated a virus. Never.
But if we take that way of thinking, could it be that we've still got this kind of status quo thinking when it comes to vitamins and supplements, and that there might be a paradigm shift in the same way that we are now understanding that it's not the germ theory, it's the terrain theory? Could there be, Dan, what does that look like if you were to propose something that if we aren't deficient of these vitamins, what is it, and what is the solution then?
it's getting back to eating real food. So I find it really confusing and perplexing that we meddle with our food so much that we then have to re-add in synthetic vitamins to food, right? Oh, it's fortified with X, Y, Z. It's like, hang on a second, why can't we just eat the real food? I think what it does is it allows us to continue this destruction of the environment, a acceptance of unsustainable farming practices, this idea that the soil is deficient and there is nothing that can be done to regenerate the soil, and we are forevermore at the mercy of the pharmaceutical companies that are making these synthetic substances, and it's the only way that we can actually support our health. I think it does a lot of disservice to people in general. Like, it disempowers them. They feel like they need to outsource their health to someone else. It gives us the wrong impression of nature, that somehow it's imperfect, right? Oh, the soil's deficient. Yeah. It's not Mother Nature's fault that it's deficient. It's everything that we're doing to it that has disrupted that natural cycle. So we need to clean our act up and move back to a more traditional way of doing things to allow nature to recover and restore itself. And once the soil regenerates, you can actually grow very, very healthy food that is incredibly nourishing, and it doesn't require pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and poisons, which could very well be doing damage to people. And then to undo that damage, they take a supplement, and they're forever locked in that cycle of, well, I'm eating the poison-ridden food, I get sick, well, now I need to take the supplements to get better. I mean, where does this end? The only way that it ends is if we break the cycle. And as long as we have this idea of, I need to be taking supplements hand over fist, I think we remain disconnected from the true underlying problems, and fewer people are going to be driven and motivated to want society to correct its ways.
I mean, until that soil regenerates, until we get the working biosphere again, do you not think that we have to supplement until we reach that point? Because I want that as well, like the ultimate scenarios that, we stop the pesticides and we go back to more natural, farming. But until then, is there a case for the supplementation, the supplements?
Doesn't take long. Months, really. I mean, if you look at what's being done in like permaculture and regenerative agriculture and sustainable farming, I mean, we're doing a lot of it here. This damaged soil, this depleted soil, can recover very, very quickly. And like, Mother Nature does this itself. Like, we don't even really have to involve ourselves that much. We just need to let it do its thing. But we can certainly speed up the process by doing certain things. So, yeah, I mean, if we were really serious about all of this, then it would already be done. Yeah. But, it's that same old thing, is like, it's the red herring. People aren't willing to look at the cause of the problem if there's this viable Band-Aid approach that sort of disconnects them from the truth and the reality. And like, we may stay disconnected forevermore in regards to all of this. The food just becomes more and more depleted. The soil becomes more heavily raped and pillaged and poisoned, until we end up in a situation like in the movie Idiocracy. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but they end up at this point where they don't realize that they need to put water into the ground to grow the food. Like, we're becoming that disconnected. We may very well end up there if we're not careful. So, yeah, I think there's much more far wider reaching and broader societal implications for sort of focusing so heavily on a supplement approach.
Clive?
Well, right now, people are in such a bad state health-wise that everybody needs supplements, in my opinion, right now, pretty much everybody, because we're being toxically poisoned all over the place. And to deal with those toxic poisonings, I think we need all the help we can get, quite honestly.
Mm.
You know, sure, we need to change farming practices and right away. But you know, I've seen lives turned around with supplements, and in the future, I would love to see the whole supplements business disappear completely. You know, we didn't need, you know, we didn't used to need it, but in this very damaged world, I really think people do need a lot of help, and supplements can provide it. You know, and even if people did want to buy fantastic food, can they get it? You know, just because the supermarket says it's organic doesn't mean it's in any way healthy.
Mm.
I guess this is a supply and demand issue as well. So if people are sort of outsourcing to products rather than outsourcing to their farmer, then that process is delayed. If everyone turned around tomorrow and went, right, I don't want to eat poisoned food anymore, that industry would be over. And obviously, like, that's a bit of a pipe dream, but it could potentially happen. And it's just about education. This takes time to re-educate people. But I wanted to ask you, Clive, do you think it's possible that supplements are working as, like, we're talking about synthetic high-dose vitamins here. Could they possibly be working like a drug and suppressing symptoms? Because I've found when people are taking high doses, when they come off, their symptoms come back.
You know, I've seen people who have changed their diet, come off the supplements they were taking and not need them anymore because the cause of the poisoning has been removed. You know, they're not eating Rice Krispies or whatever it is for breakfast. They're eating something more natural. If people change their life, obviously they need these things long term, hopefully. But if they're still, you know, I mean, if you're lucky, you've got the money to filter all the water in your house and maybe go to the spring and get fantastic spring water and so on. But most people haven't got access to the health that used to be our birthright. You know, I like to go out foraging, you know, get the wild garlic or the berries or whatever it is. And I've got quite good at actually recognizing quite a lot of stuff. But it's the education thing. The state's done the education, so people know nothing and have lost their will to be inventive. And you know, we're in a very difficult situation right now, but it's a numbers game. You know, one of the questions people said to me is, well, how many people would it take to change the world? What percentage of people need to be awake? Because they say 70% of people just go along with whatever sounds like the best thing for them. And I mean, really, all you need to get people to think is to offer them money. You know, because people say, well, money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. Lack of money is the root of all evil. That's how we're controlled, by lack of money. So how easy would it be to say to the NHS or the health service, we want your emergency services, but we don't need all your drugs, right? We'll give us the money and we'll eat better. You know, it's incredible. People think they're free when it's so obvious that they're slaves. You know, in the old days of slavery, they gave you a free house. Now you have to get a mortgage to get one. I mean, you know, we are enslaved.
Yeah, it's a system that's set up to fail. The system is by design, and I don't think we're going to fix this overnight. Like, this isn't a quick approach. This isn't a fast fix. But yeah, I guess my perspective here is that if people remain under an illusion that they can maintain good health through a pill when they're doing everything else wrong, or they haven't got the foundations right, then they're just treading water, and they're going to continue treading water forever. I mean, as I said, you can't supplement your way out of a whole food deficiency. And again, there's other, like, not even just talking about food here, there's other ways that we can get nourishment, like through the sun. And there's like many documented effects that happen from sun exposure that are above and beyond taking a vitamin D pill. So we may only get like a few of the effects from taking a vitamin D supplement, But then we're missing out on all of the other things that the sun provides for us. And that's a problem, because a lot of people are unfortunately under the impression that that the only reason why the sun is good is because of vitamin D. Right? So therefore, I'm not getting sun. Therefore, I take the vitamin D. Now I'm good. I don't need to worry about the sun anymore. Or it's like, no, actually, you need to be getting the sun. So are we actually doing ourselves a disservice by promoting people taking things like vitamin D? Whereas if we didn't necessarily promote this and we didn't have access to it, people would be forced to take the time out of their busy lives and get outside and reap the benefits of sun exposure.
Most people can't afford to feed their families working full time. The reality is a lot of people haven't got the time to get the sun. They're spraying the skies with God knows what. And, I believe that the sun provides not just all the wonderful things it provides, but also information. One of the reasons that's been put to me is why they're blocking the sun right now is not just all the obvious reasons, but there's actually information coming in that would upgrade us. I mean, it's a bit esoteric. I don't know that it's true, but it could be.
Photon energy. I've heard that as well, Clive. It's photon energy that reacts with our DNA, and it's part of the awakening process. And that's, because I've gone deep down that rabbit hole as well. I do think light is more than just life-giving. I think it is also in terms of speeding up the consciousness as well of the planet. I do believe that. But yeah, so I hear what Dan's saying here. It's we shouldn't see these supplements as an excuse to not have the real authentic thing that we're meant to be after. We're not meant to replace the main course with the supplement. But is it not the case, Dan, that these supplements, we have to take from the understanding that people aren't seeing it that way, and they are still trying to get their whole food and their organic food, and they are just seeing the supplements as a supplementation, as an extra? But what you're saying is there's a danger to then make the main course, make the supplement the main course, right?
Yeah. We lose sight of what we really need.
Yeah.
So like a classic example of that is not getting exposure to the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there are people out there who, like, as Clive said, a lot of people struggle to put food on the table. But if there's people out there who are spending money on like a vitamin D pill under the illusion that that's going to replace their lack of sun exposure, and then they're forfeiting eating better food because they could have spent that money that they spent on the supplement on their food. Well, get outside, get the sun. It's free. It's there for you. It doesn't cost anything. Literally walk out your front door and get it.
Yeah, and as Clive would say, that some people just they do have that intelligence, that awareness. It's just, they may have to be stuck indoors during the day and they just can't get the sunlight, the adequate sunlight that they need, would then know that a vitamin D tablet be okay in that instance?
I mean,
It's not replacing the sun.
It may not be, but it stopped me getting a cold for 18 years. And a year's supply is £10 or £20. It's ludicrously cheap. It's not like it's expensive or anything. And the thing is that vitamin C, for example, is one of the ultimate detoxification agents. That's why it works. Cancer with a K, so many growths are reduced once you get the toxins out. And so one of the reasons for vitamin C is not as a replacement for what should be in food, but just the fact it's a fantastic detoxifier. Kills stuff that you don't want.
Yeah.
And it's cheap.
It may do that. It may do that.
It does.
But if it's working that way, then I think we need to find out how it's really working, and people deserve to know that it's not actually working by correcting a deficiency, right? It's working by detoxifying. So now why do I need to detoxify so much? Oh, you mean to tell me that I'm being poisoned, right? So then it's like, okay, shit, I don't want to be poisoned. I need to look now at the sources of my poisoning and how do I reduce my exposure, and how do I support my body's natural detoxification mechanisms? Because if they're taking it under the guise of it's something that I'm not eating, right, they're never going to worry about the poisons and reducing their exposure and their toxic load.
The problem is people like their poisons. They like Coca-Cola. And trying to get people to unaddict themselves. Obviously, we're talking about addiction at one level is not an easy thing. Also, the bad food, is the cheap food. You know, the very foods they want us to eat, the bad foods, are encouraged. You know, here in England, the subsidies on agriculture are appalling. You know, when I was young, people used to think that rapeseed oil was only good for oiling machines. They were right. Now, rapeseed oil is touted as a health product. It's just outrageously stupid. Unfortunately, all the bottled oils are poisonous, with maybe the exception of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil, but sunflower oil. I went to see Barbara O'Neill last week, and she was saying that 1 tablespoonful of soya oil is the equivalent in terms of xenoestrogens as to 1 birth control pill. And people are drinking soya milk thinking it's healthy. They're eating soya thinking it's not going to affect their sexuality. They're drinking water out of plastic bottles, not realizing that their sexuality is being affected by the estrogens in the water. Then they're drinking water from the tap. I mean, I don't know whether you're aware of what happens in the sewage works, right? They separate the solids from the fats, from the liquids, and so on. They put the fats through a process called soapification. Soapification, they sell it to the soap companies, right? That's one of the things they do. Then they filter out the solids, but they can't filter out the birth control pills, the antibiotics, everything else. So people are bathing in, you know, water that's been gone through the bodies of jabbed people. They, you know, God knows what's going on right now. And so at the very, very least, I would advise people, you know, just like Dan says, go out and get some sunshine, but watch out for that bloody water. You know, buy filters, find out, ring up the water supplier and say, is my water absolutely pure, or has it been through a sewage works? Because you're dealing with 2 totally different things. Maybe you just got to filter out the chlorine on the one hand, but filtering out the drugs, you need a better sort of filter.
I think we also need to be careful not to blame real food as the cause of the problem, right? So people are pointing to, it's this substance in the food, it's the oxalates, it's the lignans, it's the tannins, it's the whatever, right? And they're blaming that as the problem when we're poisoning our food, we're processing it, we're refining it, we're doing all this other stuff to it. And this is another sleight of hand tactic. This is another red herring tactic that I think is possibly happening with this deficiency theory. It's like, don't worry about the poisons on your food. Don't worry about the way that we're processing and refining it. It's the naturally occurring compounds in the food that are making you sick. So Clive said, like, we got to be careful of the water. If people are drinking toxic polluted water and they get sick, do you say that water is bad for you? Like, of course not. You say it's the poison in the water, right? So it's the same idea with food. If you're eating poison, toxic food and you get sick, stop blaming Mother Nature for the problem. Like, look at what men are doing to it and let's deal with that. And then if we're still getting issues, then we can possibly start looking at, you know, is there a compound in this food that really does make us sick? Or is it all of our chicanery that's going on and us adulterating our food supply?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then I was going to ask my thing about the vitamin D. Is it not the case that potentially has its own toxicity within that? The cholesterol, that, have I said that right?
Well, luckily we're not rats. And yes, I'm sure it's probably deadly for rats, but it isn't for us, thankfully.
Okay, all right. Dan, have you ever talked about that? I'm sure you must have mentioned that. But what do you think about vitamin D if we just take that as a case study in itself? Does that have?
Yeah, I mean, they use massive doses. They use massive doses for rats to have this effect, which we don't get if we take vitamin D as a pill. We would need to take probably 0.5 kilogram of it in one go for it to have a sort of effect.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think we're missing out from the beneficial effects of the sun by focusing on the vitamin D. And I'm not even convinced that the vitamin D is the thing that has the effect in the body. I think it's actually the light. It's it's the light from the sun that has the effect, and the vitamin D is the evidence that we've been exposed to the sun. So if you go to your doctor and your vitamin D is low and you take a pill and your level on the paperwork goes up, go back to your doctor, oh, good stuff, your levels are up, it's all good. It's like you've just artificially raised your level and you're still missing the thing that you need, which is the exposure to the light.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I see. It's Clive. Do you kind of go along with that? I can kind of see that. You know, the idea that we're almost extracting a symptom from the thing that we actually need, and we're thinking that is actually, you know, replenishing us, but we're actually missing out on the actual core visceral thing that we're after in terms of the sunlight, as Dan's saying there.
Well, absolutely. You know, when I had my organic farm, that was in Spain, and I got all the sun I needed. I didn't need vitamin D. But here in winter, I don't want to get a cold. And I know from, 50 years of experience prior to taking vitamin D that every year I get a few colds. I'm living proof that vitamin D for me stopped me getting colds. And it's as simple as that.
I mean, could it be the way, like Dan mentioned, it's similar, it can be likened to drugs, for instance. If you were unhappy and you were depressed, and then you took like an antidepressant, you could argue then, a couple of weeks as well, this works. I'm no longer depressed. Could it not be the case that vitamins have a similar kind of effect in that they temporarily uplift your symptoms over a sustained period of time, and then when you look at that, you say, actually, wow, this is working. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling good. And then when could that be the case with vitamins or not?
Well, I mean, the thing is that if I am feeling down, I might have a piece of chocolate. Chocolate's a drug. I might have a cup of tea. That's a drug. People like a cup of coffee. That's a drug.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, I appreciate synthetic is totally different to natural. But I mean, as I say, what I'm interested in is assuming it doesn't do any damage, does it work? And I've given vitamin D to so many people over the last 2 decades, and the results have been extraordinary across all sorts of issues. All you got to do is look at cancer rates from Norway to Nigeria. The more sun there is, the less cancer there is. Full stop. Does vitamin D go at least part of the way to replicate that? Yes, part of the way. Obviously, it can't go the whole way, but vitamins and supplements, however they work for a lot of people, and life-changingly so.
Okay. All right. Dan, do you guys want to leave any sort of closing statements? And also, do you want to also plug your own, channels and everything else? I think that would be good to do. And by the way, thank you so much for this fascinating, conversation. This is what it's all about. It's having these discussions, because if we don't synthesize slightly different perspectives, we're never going to grow. And I think actually there's more common ground here than there is, slightly different views on this. So I actually think that we're both wanting the same thing. And, I really like Dan's view of really changing the mindset of the people as well, because I think if we stay in this sort of loop thinking of needing the supplement, then we're never actually going to get to the heart of the actual main issue. And I totally hear that. Clive, you're more talking about, well, in the meantime, until we resolve the larger issues, then we need to sort of give the things, fill the holes, right? Fill the blind spots with things. Otherwise, because it's just not practical in the world we're living in. Would that be a kind of a fair assessment of where you two are at?
I think so.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're in agreement more than we're probably in disagreement on a few things, and those things are probably here nor there, really, in the grand scheme. It's about getting back to basics, really. It's about reconnecting and doing things the way that we used to do it. We've just been disconnected from that, right? It's time to reconnect. The answers are there. It's not like we're not dealing with an unknown here. It's not like, how do we solve the problem? We lived like this for a really long time. Our forefathers, maybe our fathers even did a lot of this stuff. Our grandfathers more so, our great-grandfathers even more so. They lived a way that was conducive towards having much better health. They didn't rape and pillage and do things to the environment that we're doing today. They lived it. They breathed it. They did it. Let's just replicate what they were doing. Doesn't mean we need to go back to the Dark Ages. Yeah, but let's take a leaf out of their book, implement some of the things that they used to do, and let's start cleaning up our act.
Yeah, I think your message should be going straight to the authorities. That's I think that's the kind of the key, isn't it? Like to get them to change things. But they're at that level, those echelons, they're kind of not really thinking about the health of the people, though, are they? Unfortunately, I mean, my thing is I've tried to go locally to my local farms, right? But my nearest one's 30 miles away for food. I mean, I can get eggs and stuff in my immediate farms, but anything more substantial than that, I've got to drive 30 miles. So it's kind of like trying to ask people to do that when they've got a supermarket just on their high street. It's going to be quite a difficult thing to, because I know what you're saying, to cut the supply and demand so that there's a change. But how can we? What does that look like practically when things are so fragmented in terms of trying to source things locally? Let's say.
I used to live in a concrete jungle in a suburb called Newstead in Brisbane, and we had like a co-op come down every Tuesday morning. They just set up on the concrete. They had the stall there, and they had sourced produce from farms that maybe were 50 to 100 kilometers away. But they grew the food properly. They grew it without poison. They brought it into the city because the demand was there. The people wanted it. And that's how we got our food. And as that started to happen, more and more people wanted that. So it started to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Mm-hmm. And then we started getting some of these farmers coming down to the local markets every Saturday. And you'd go there and there would just be so many people wanting this stuff. So, I mean, there are like people can set those co-ops up if they're really passionate about it and they want to make meaningful change in their community. Like there are these avenues. It takes some work and some logistics and a bit of, team effort. But if people really want it, anything's possible.
Absolutely. And actually, I spoke to Mark Byford. He's a farmer. He's sort of a kind of a bit of a whistleblower, to what's going on at the moment, talking about how the soil's been completely deliberately destroyed so that they can't farm. And then you have DEFRA coming in and trying to implement the kind of the World Economic Forum's Agenda 30 stuff, But he's an ambassador for something called the Open Food Network. And what it is, it's a website that connects towns to their nearest farms, and he's connected a delivery service. So whenever you go, instead of going to your local supermarket, you go onto that website, you can see your nearest farm, and you can actually buy it from the farm directly, and then there's a delivery service straight to your door. I think that has to be, those kind of little shifts have to be what we need to see, and we will have to support these kind of grassroots movements to bring the power back to the people and to the farmers. And I think by doing that, we can cut the supply and demand for the big chains, right?
What was the name of that organization again?
Yeah, it's called I'll tell you right now, Clive, because I think this is I think this is a brilliant project. It's called openfoodnetwork.org.uk, and they're trying to connect more farms into it. They've got a few already. It's quite a fledgling site, but I think something like that, if you can imagine across the country, you go onto that website, you find your local farm, and then you find the menu of all the food, the locally sourced food there, and then it delivers it straight to your door. I mean, I would do that instead of Tesco's, So I think things like that could be the little, that those things can create that shift. But yeah, no, thank you, Dan. Thank you so much, for bringing your insights in. I love you, man. I think you're absolutely great. You're a real maverick, and I really look up to you. And you've got so many different perspectives that challenge the status quo, and you're brave enough to do that. So I really thank you. And then Dan, would you mind just telling the audience your book as well and your website, because the book is quite fresh, isn't it? So
yeah, thanks, John and Clive. It was a really great discussion. And look, I don't claim to know all the truth. I don't claim to know all the answers. I just want to get to the bottom of this. I want to try and figure out as much truth as possible and focus on doing what I can personally to make the world a better place and look after my own health and be proactive where I can. And it's down to the individual. Each person needs to take these steps themselves. No one can do it for them. So it's where your priorities lie, I guess. If it's important to you, you'll do it. If it's not, then you won't. So yeah, people can find me on humanley.com, humanley.com. Just taking a really simple back to basics approach with health. I don't think it needs to be hard. As you said, Clive, it's actually really simple, and the field of medicine overcomplicates things. And yeah, I've got a podcast and a Telegram channel, which is just t.me/humanly. And I also have a book, Can You Catch a Cold? So that was released just a couple of months ago, and it's available on Amazon and soon to be on lulu.com.
There we go, Clive. We spoke about that earlier. I thought that was quite, synchronistic how you mentioned that. But, Dan's written this book, Can You Catch a Cold? Really, it's basically saying what you were saying earlier about how, there's this old way that you cough on someone and you pick something up. And, I think we need to change the way we think about that because, people are sort of stuck in that way of thinking. But yourself, Clive, thank you again for joining me. It's been a long time coming. I know that we connected a while back, and it's finally the right time to bring you on. And I know that you've done a lot of talks, and you're quite an established speaker, and people come to see you all over the country. And you've been helping and healing people. And you mentioned, people have been curing from cancers and stuff like that. So you're obviously doing some good work. Would you like to mention your website and how they can find you, and if you have any books or podcasts or anything like that?
I used to be on YouTube up until 2014. I think I was one of the very first people to be chucked off YouTube. And that was by the UK government. So at that point, I started a club, a private members club, which I've called secrethealthclub.com. And all the information they don't want you to know is basically on secrethealthclub.com. And then I've got basically there's like an A to Z of health issues and what to do. It's quite good. And then I've got a supplement company, which is clivedecarle.com. And while we sell quite a lot of supplements, we do the 10 important ones that I mentioned, which include B vitamins and so on, at a bargain price. So if you want to buy a box with the 10 most important stuff, it's called the monthly rejuvenation pack. And I would say, without exaggeration, that probably 80% of people are going to notice something profound change that would be beneficial. So that's what I'd recommend, clivedecarle.com. And if people want to watch videos, well, then not really many on YouTube anymore. Odyssey, Rumble, those sort of places have them. And recently I put out a couple of videos about a new product, which is a chair, which is the ultimate in relaxation, so much so that people are coming off the battlefield with trauma. People who are the more traumatized somebody is, the more effective it is. And in 10 minutes, most people find a total release. It's extraordinary. I've never experienced anything like it. We've had people who've been in pain for 20 years. You name the trauma, they've had it, and they've come out of it. Watch a few of the videos. It's called The Magic Chair. You should be able to find some videos on there, and there are a lot more coming.
Brilliant. And just from myself, thanks for watching this show. Obviously, I'm trying to bring on these incredible thought leaders and people that are really trying to, level up, trying to raise the bar here, trying to, really change the way that we do things and really help people, help humanity, help society. And so you two gentlemen are two people that I see doing that. So for everyone watching, and also please subscribe to my channel. Please share this video if you find it useful. Please also find these gentlemen and add them and subscribe to them as well. So from me, Dan, Roytas, and Clive De Carle. Did I say that right? Yeah, I said that correctly. Yeah, that's right. We'll bid you farewell, and perhaps we'll do this on another time. Thanks, everyone. Cheers, guys.